When we started this podcast series, this was an episode that I knew had to be in there. And it was going to be one of those anchoring episodes that gives people a real idea about what we do, but why we think living your life in a certain way, sourcing your food in a certain way is important. This episode is about our friends Alistair and Laura, who are farmers, but really it's about their pigs and the pigs that they had running around in their woodland through 2/3 of 2023, and why one of those pigs, or what remains of it, is now in one of our chest freezers outside, and how we came from helping them with their woodland to picking up the meat from the carcass of one of the pigs and turning that into food here. And it's a long episode. It is a bit rambling. Partly that's because Alistair and I have known each other for quite a while, and we just talk. We can keep talking forever, as you can probably hear. It's also because it's such a big topic. There is the ecology of the woodland and how the pigs interacted with that, but also the mechanics of turning woodland into effectively farmland without removing the trees. So how you do that? How do you raise animals inside a fenced area, inside an area that wasn't designed to be fenced? So how do you do that? There's the component of feeding and how much of the food for the animals comes from the woodland itself. How much food do you have to put in? How much does that cost? The costs overall, the business sense of this. How does this work as a business? Does it work as a business? Because these are the things that if you want to have ethical meat that is raised in a way that is good for the animal, it's good for the place where that animal is raised, it's good for the person that's raising it, and it's good for supporting a wider economy where all of these things can be valued and can live in some kind of balance and exist in some kind of balance, then we need to nail these things. We need to decide how we're going to get our food and where it's going to come from and how to prioritize what's important. So it's a long episode for that reason. The audio quality is about as good as we can make it, but again, it was us basically sat in our living room having a conversation with dogs milling around and the fires and going on in the corner, and it's not studio quality audio. But if you do last through to the end of it and you listen to every part of this, then I think you really will get something out of it, particularly at the end where we start talking about how this fits into a wider business model and how it goes beyond just what can you do with these pigs, how can you raise pigs yourself, how can you access somebody who is raising pigs, but why? And why should you? And what will you have to compromise on, both as a producer and as a customer, in order to do that? So I think it's a really interesting episode. Thank you for listening to this rambling intro. And now I'm going to leave you with myself and Alistair sat in a small stone cottage in a valley in North Wales, drinking gin. Well, you haven't lived, you've fallen down between big straw bales.
Or even small ones.
Yeah, razored yourself. Razored yourself trying to get back out. Because it sort of lets you in one way, but it's like...
it's deadly.
What's those fish that swim at your urethra?
I don't know.
They've got a spine on their back.
I know exactly which ones you mean.
Yes,
they live in the Amazon.
Yeah, you don't pee underwater in the Amazon.
Let's not do that.
This is the chat people want, isn't it?
It is.
So let's talk about your pigs.
Shall we?
So, this is second year of pigs. Was it second consecutive, or did you have a gap?
We had a gap.
Okay.
Because I think... Was it a 2-year gap? It was almost a COVID gap. Probably.
No, it was the first year we had COVID pigs. The first pigs were COVID pigs.
Yes. I think the first ones were a shock to the system, really. And then it was deciding to give them a year off, and then wedding and things like that got in the way.
Oh, that was at the wedding. Yeah.
Yes. The getting married bit. So got in the way.
So whose idea was the pigs originally?
I'm going to say mine, very much. Yeah, definitely not Laura, my partner. It was something that I've been interested in based off seeing other graziers kind of utilising their woodlands as part of their management plan, and sort of other interested sort of folk who have championed them as an extra income. And considering we're at least 3/4 woodland compared to our grassland, it really makes sense to take advantage of that.
Because otherwise you're 99% sheep, aren't you?
Yes.
1% chickens.
Yes. Hobby chickens.
Yeah.
Mostly sheep. And then lots and lots of falling down woodland.
Which you try and sort of sell off before it becomes
Yes.
rotted matter.
Yes, exactly. It's an afterthought. But it is 3/4 of the land space, so it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that brief window where it's a standing tree, and then it's rotting on the floor. Somewhere in between those two states is where you can sell it.
Yes. And our ground is exceptionally good for growing ash, which is all just got dieback now. So
yeah, so all of us I think we're still on for like 90% of the ash trees in North Wales are going to die, aren't they, in the next 10 years or something?
Yes. Yeah, ours are slowly turning and dropping things.
So talk about that first year with the pigs. How many were there?
So in the first year there were 5 pigs. The number was based on the fact that we originally set out, I think we'd just done some sort of fag packet maths and worked out that we needed 6 to kind of cover my time and keep 1 for the house, as it were.
So you planned out the hours of you going down to feed them or sort out the fencing
exactly.
And things,
It was a very loose. It will take me 10 minutes a day, twice, or 20 minutes a day, twice a day, to look after X number of animals. How many do we need? With the initial idea that we'd move them around. It turned out that we moved them a little bit, but just based on timings and when we got them and the seasonality and the weather, we moved them twice, and that was kind of us, because they were getting to a very fat stage, and if we ended up moving them, it would have been a lot more extra work and setup. So we ended up just leaving them there, and so they were these 5 pigs, because that was all we got at the market, which is where we purchased them, and because there was a group of them, and they were on 1/4 of an acre. I think was the original pen size off the top of my head. Yeah.
So we should probably talk about that pen, because it's wonderfully simple.
Yes.
Wasn't it? You didn't put any posts in or anything like that. You just...
Yeah. So it was. Our land is mostly triple SI, and it's based on the limestone pavement. So we're limited where we can do some of these woodland operations, that we can trial things before going to NRW and the triple SI officers and saying, we want to do this, and then giving us permission to do something on our own land.
So for the audience, a triple SI is a site of special scientific interest. So it's an area that's legally designated as being slightly more ecologically controlled than the areas around it for either a certain habitat or a certain species. And you can get it for even like geological things. I know places where it's an ecologically protected area because of fossils, but you can't do anything to the plants in that area either.
No, and it's usually a fixed point within the sort of landscape shift, where it's held in perpetuity, sort of thing. But anyway, the original pen was in an old woodland compartment, which had originally been a softwood plantation. So it was just this tiny little 1/4 acre spot full of western red cedar, and we fenced it mostly by screwing insulators into the side of stumps where I'd done some thinning, or reclaimed sort of old oak fence posts that were snapped off. So we were just reusing that, plus some aluminium wire that we purchased.
So that was just, 4 inches off the ground?
Yeah, so I think it was 4 and 10 off the top of my head. Yeah, or 4 and 1 foot, something like that. 2 strands, very simple. and then connected to the main sheep energizer that we use, which is a 3-joule one, because we didn't end up buying a new energizer just for this trial, into a ground stake, and then a gate that allowed the pigs to walk into it, because pigs for some reason won't cross fences, or don't like crossing fences where they've been shocked before. And then inside we had 2 sort of empty IBC, sort of water bladder, meter by meter cube plastic containers with the sides cut out, which they used as their sort of shelter, which they didn't really use. It was more, in torrential rain that they actually ever moved into it.
So it was a fairly simple setup. So it's just you had the area of woodland already. You put up a very low electric fence. I mean, you could trip over this thing, couldn't you?
Yes.
If you're walking around there in the dark, you didn't know it was there. It would be coming up mid shin.
Yes.
You had the wooden gate where they went in, as you said, electric fence energizer powering all of that, and then a little bit of structure inside, but really not much at all.
Yeah. It was the structure was meant to be mobile because we didn't know what, the plan was to originally move them further. But yeah, it was as simple as we could possibly do. The water that we provided to the animals was in, I believe it was a third of a green barrel, plastic green barrel that was cut off, and I think that's what we used for their water.
Was that the one we had to fix with? You discovered the beauty of Stixall sealants, hybrid adhesive stuff.
Yeah.
I remember leaning in a barrel with a drill.
No, that was the most recent one.
Or was that just for the recent one?
Yeah, that was the most recent one. So that was we originally when we were doing those pigs, we bought pig nipple drinkers, they're called. It's a little spring-loaded bit of metal that the pigs bite, and then water then flows through a little filter out to them. So they're not, it's sort of on-demand drink. And the original plan, for those original pigs was to have the water drinker set up that we then subsequently used this year, which sort of worked. Wasn't amazing, and we had backup again of that third.
How old were the pigs when they went in?
For that first batch, I think we followed almost exactly the same this year, but we got them as weaners, so as at about 8 weeks old. We had them for 1 week inside some stable, sort of buildings that we've got, just so that we could get used to them and them us, and set up a feeding routine. When they were a bit more used to us and the feed that we were giving them, we moved them to an old orchard, which was 50 meters away, where we did some electric fence training. And again, the size of that was probably 4 bays of a car park, something, not particularly big or large. That's almost an American size description. It was 4 eagles long.
4 cubits to the duck.
Yeah. Sorry, it was about 5 meters wide by about 20. For the electric fence training, where we again used the same 2 strands that we used in the woodland, and then backed it up with some extra sheep hurdles that I had from the other enterprises to be a physical barrier. So they would find the electric first, and then gradually we took away the physical barrier and just left the wire.
So it's quite an iterative process you were going through from step to step to step. It wasn't just throw them in the pen, get them fat.
It's with anything electrical and that psychological barrier, it's very much you have to baby steps and introduce it, and then let them learn that they can be safe if they don't run through. So whenever you're doing electric fence training, you never fully surround them, any animal. You would you put it on one. You started off next to the water point, and then you gradually extend it. Maybe cut the field in half if it's sheep, and then you gradually shrink that area so that they respect the fence. And I wish my sheep did it as well as the pigs do.
The sheep are kind of more insulated, aren't they? They've only
Yes.
certain points that they'll get electrocuted on.
Yes. Today was an example of sheep and electric fences as I was running around with a head torch this evening.
Or is this when you get the call of like, there's a sheep in the garden?
Luckily it's not that bad. We're nicely ring fenced, so it's less of a problem.
Well, in my experience, sheep are generally heading towards a means of death anyway.
Yes.
They're trying to find the way to die somewhere. They see a ditch on the horizon and just go, I want to go and put myself in that upside down in the water.
Yes, you've seen that
Yeah.
meme.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's what is it? If a sheep could, it would die twice. The pigs, on the other hand, are fantastic in terms of staying in. They were. I think we got twice. They changed paddocks, but again, they never left the area that we put them in this year. So, the sort of horror stories of people wrangling pigs all over the woodland haven't transpired so far.
We're going to come back to that point.
Yes, I thought we might.
So you put the pigs in the pen, and
The training pen, yeah.
the training pen, and then moved them over to the main pen. How do you do that?
So the first batch we did it, we merely walked them because it was short distance. This time we plan to load them into a trailer to give them some knowledge of a trailer takes them to a new and better place.
Trailer is friend.
Trailer is friend, and it's going to take you to something nice, with the intent that at the end of the process, the pigs would load themselves onto the trailer before heading off for their one bad day.
It's a rotten trick, really, isn't it?
It is. There are one of the people that has mentored me in pigs. You know, his sort of one of his selling points is that his pigs have never seen a trailer until they have that. They leave the farm. Whereas other people like to use the trailers more often, so that actually it's not a unique sort of experience to them. It's something that they are accustomed to.
Because a stock trailer is a pretty scary thing if you're an animal, because it's this giant thing you load yourself into that's noisy and clattery and dark or slippery. The floors, it's not the nice mud that you're used to and your feet are built for. It's all wrong,
It's
isn't
an
it?
ice rink almost.
I mean, I've ridden in your trailer as we've driven around your farm and gone from upright to
Not upright.
apex above, arse above apex, quite easily. It's a slippery place.
Yeah, stock board does not a good trailer base make.
No. So pigs down into main pen. This is the first batch. And then from what I can remember, they quite quickly started demolishing the undergrowth that was there.
Yeah, there was pigs operate in a let's find the limit of our exploitation, and they spend a few days doing that, and then it becomes basically they just start eating into it, and suddenly you'll have a little corridor that cuts through it, and then gradually those corridors expand, and suddenly there's little islands of greenery left. And until they're all gone.
They're like sort of piggy glaciers. They take all the soft bits first.
Yeah.
And eventually they'll get all the hard, tough bits as well, but it'll take longer.
Yes. Yeah. And that was very much evident in the more recent batch.
Did it surprise you with that first batch how quickly they took everything?
I think it did, certainly because that area there was much more soft vegetation compared to this time. The most recent batch. So yeah, that I thought it would have lasted them longer, and there's probably a good reason that many people that are doing woodland pigs or pastured pigs are reseeding afterwards, changing the makeup of what they're going to put pigs into in the future, because they can improve or slow them down by putting in different species.
I mean, it's nothing to do with me really in not even in the grand scheme of things, in any scheme of things. I was just looking at the pigs. But it was interesting to see how quickly that went. They took that vegetation out, but also how deep they went as well. So they went right through the root structure.
Yeah, they they do burrow down.
6 inches, 8 inches.
Yeah, the pig plough nose is a very real thing.
And it happened in a couple of weeks, didn't it?
Yeah, so I think the first batch we got in, when was it? End of June, I'm going to say, maybe middle of June, and they were in that paddock probably middle to end of July, and then they left the farm probably end of November. Very similar time actually to this most recent batch, and their disturbance was quite impactful on that area. Like you and I have both revisited it, seeing what's come up or not come up, and the time on that the animals have severely impacts what comes back in terms of rest. The paddock has not come back quickly from that level of impact.
You could take all the fencing away what you have done, and you could sort of see where you could see a perfectly square patch of different
Yes.
to what's around it, can't you?
Yeah, you can see the management.
They didn't touch the trees, really, did they?
No, I thought, I was worried that they would debark trees more than they did. Maybe it's just the wrong species of tree,
Or is it just
or the wrong time of year.
or if
well.
they've been there longer, or if they've been there in spring when the sap's rising
Yeah.
up, maybe the sap is sweeter.
Yes.
Because we're in December now, but because of where we are, it was sort of entering the very first stages of soft spring, because we don't really get proper winters down here.
No.
And the trees in our woods are noticing they're starting to get nibbled on the bottom again by squirrels and rabbits coming through.
Oh, buds.
There's hazel buds out. Yeah. So pigs fed. I think you briefly you went off to visit family or something. We fed the pigs for a couple of days, and other people fed the pigs. Yeah. And it was quite nice and watching them grow. But it is always that thing of I am staring at something that at some point I will have some hand in killing and eating.
Yeah. There is, unlike the sheep who are there's a chance that they will become a mother and live on the farm and be part of that farm ecostructure. Is that even a word, ecostructure? But they're not purely bred for food.
No.
They have a secondary function, and the food is a byproduct of not fitting into that system usually. Whereas the pigs very much were, that is comes to the farm, leaves the farm, and becomes food to feed locals effectively, and interested party.
That's something that I kind of wish everyone could go through in terms of eating meat, because neither you or I, or we're definitely not vegans. If we're the opposite of vegans, we shoot animals and eat them.
Yes. But we both like to know where our food comes from. And I think what you're alluding to is that a lot of people have a massive disconnect now between what is on their plate and how it got there. Back even 50, 60 years ago, there would be tenement houses in the middle of Manchester where people would still have pigs in their front garden. And they would go off to the allotment to grow food, to bring back that food to feed the pig.
Yeah, pig slops.
Because the meat was expensive, but they could grow their own in that, tiny 2x6 space at the front of the house or at the back.
Yeah, and I think everyone should at some point look into the eyes of the thing they're about to eat or kill.
Yes.
Not because then it gets into the soul and so, well, just understand there's a cost to that meat.
Yes.
Something has had to die for that pig product, for your pork scratchings.
The rabbit as a pet thing, a lot of people used to keep rabbits for the table. But but it's like that giant poster that you occasionally see, which is where do you draw the line for food versus pet? And it seems to be in this country somewhere just ahead of horse, dog and cat and mouse and hamster, whereas in France it's the other side of the horse.
Oh, the power of the French, there's a movement they're stopping eating horse. They don't eat as much horse as they used to.
I think that's probably because the amount of vet stuff that's shoved into horses now.
Well, no, there's a whole thing of you can't use certain drugs on horses in Europe because they might end up in the food chain.
Well, horse meat is probably fantastic, and it's a silly waste of a great animal at the end of its life to just be consigned to the scrap heap when it is also capable of feeding, even the homeless. There are charities and people screaming for quality food.
I can't wait to have that as our campaign thing.
Yeah.
Feed horse meat to the homeless. Horse meat for the homeless. Right, Amy, put that on a T-shirt, please. We have to get that on there. Vote horse meat for the homeless. So, good
Lord.
Rabbit holes. So, looking at these pigs, now we're going to kill them, and then you got to a point, sort of early autumn, where it was time for them to go off, and you presumably loaded them up into a trailer and then drove them off to the abattoir.
Yes, we took them from the pen back to the original barn that they arrived in as piglets, and then loaded them to the trailer and off to the abattoir, where they were then sent to a butcher not connected to the abattoir. So between batches we've changed where we sent them. Which I'm sure we'll talk about. But,
that's a story in itself.
Yes, that is. And then we got the meat back at the end after, some conversation with the butchers as to what sort of cuts people wanted. We went to the customers and had a chat, or at least gave them some options. And then the meat came back to us.
So you had pre-sold this meat, hadn't you?
Yeah.
So you had 6 pigs.
Yeah.
You were keeping one yourself?
Yes.
So you had 5 pigs to sell. We had a half a pig, so you had 4.5 pigs left.
Yeah.
How did you sell them and who to? Roughly?
So the remaining pigs went word of mouth to a combination of family, friends, family, friends, and some family members as well. So it wasn't. It was more very local connections. It wasn't going, we weren't stretching to find people, which has been the case this time.
Well, I think everyone who had a half a pig or a pig in that first year probably came to your wedding the next year.
Yes, and everyone that had a pig that first year has had one again.
Right.
So clearly they like them.
Because we went from a half pig to a full pig this year.
Yes.
Which is why we have to play raw meat Jenga in the freezer now to get to get anything.
Yes.
Well,
we're also doing that. We've since doing the first batch, we didn't have a commercial freezer. So this is why the other reason you direct and pre-sell everything, because then it can go from the butchers direct to the customer, which means we, the farm, don't have to do any handling of the meat other than, putting labels on if we're set up to do that.
Wasn't the thing with one of the pig boxes had an interesting journey though?
Yes. Are we talking about? Yes. So a very good friend of mine, he lives down on the south coast, and the courier company picked up the delivery first thing in the morning, as they're consigned to do, and off it went. And meat has to arrive. I think it's certainly within 24 hours, but ideally, I think it's about 18 hours that they put as the chillable time before you really need to actually start sending it on properly, sort of, frozen vehicle.
Yeah. More expensive courier.
Yeah, more expensive couriers. And everyone who'd been given their sort of courier details was reporting back in, yep, ours has arrived, this is that. This one was sort of constantly stuck at depot. And, the clock was ticking on how, whether or not they were going to get it done in the time period. And it was ticking away, and we were going, well, this is quite an expensive animal, that this person's paid good money for, and we can't give them the meat again, because once it's gone, we only had those 5 animals.
Yeah, you can't go into the stock room and get another one.
Yeah, exactly. There isn't extra pig. We got a message from the couriers saying, your meat has been delayed because of bees, which is something that I don't think anyone.
That's not a pre-formatted message, is it?
No, it's very much not. But it turns out that you can send honeybees around the country via courier. And
is that per bee, or do you send it in a...
I presume it's a whole hive in a box. Because what must have happened is the box and the pallet that our meat was on collapsed. Probably our boxes, to be fair.
They put the bees on top of your box.
A swarm of bees was preventing the workers from carrying on the journey. But it arrived. The box was very much beaten up. But luckily, we backpacked everything for those customers.
So there were no bees in the pork?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because that's going to be a hell of a security system. It's just surrounded by angry bees. Your package has arrived surrounded by angry bees.
Yes, if only they were chilled, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Do you
just go in? How do you just go into the van with a smoker and try and freak them out?
I guess it was outside. I guess someone, a bit like those videos you see of people trying to unload vast volumes of beer off the back of a lorry and getting it horribly, horribly wrong. I'm guessing that's what happened. Is they were reversing out with a forklift and the whole thing fell sideways and there were just bees.
Oh, so you need to look through YouTube, all the fail army videos, then to find the consignment of bees.
Yeah.
So apart from the bees, everyone got their meat.
Everyone enjoyed their meat. There were issues when it came to, certainly both of us. We laid out our boxes. The butcher had not aided us in any way, shape, or form with knowing what cuts were what as first time sort of slaughtering of pigs. The butchery process provides various cuts, and we did a huge amount of research watching various English and American butchers processing pigs, naming what each part was, how it's broken down, what part is used for what. So that's how we made our cut lists. We sent that off to the butcher. We got them back, and they looked nothing like any of the cuts that we were expecting. And it did also look a bit like they'd given it to a child to do.
Having from our half pig, I can extrapolate that pig had at least 3 sets of ribs.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 legs.
Yeah.
But no neck.
Yes. So the cuts had come to us vac packed for labeling, and we spread them out on sort of clean surfaces and gone through and tried matching up groups of cuts for the local customers, just going, that looks like that. And when we had enough of those, it was like, okay, so that's a set of legs, that's a set of this. And then there was a myriad of, it might be this.
It was a very difficult pig jigsaw.
Yes.
I can only imagine that
pig Jenga.
The way they approached this as a butchery exercise was they hung a carcass in the chiller. It's hanging from the rack. They turned the lights off And they sent the apprentice in there with a scythe and just told him to wildly hack at the pig like a giant piñata until bits fell off, scoop it up and put it in a box, because the quality of the butchery was mixed.
Yeah.
Some of it was fine, absolutely fine, exactly as you'd expect. Some of it was, there is a piece of bone from the opposing limb in this cut, and I don't know how that's possible.
Yes, there is.
Well, none of this is your fault. It's just, it was really interesting.
Yeah, so I've worked at this butcher's before with a different company.
Who are not being named.
And they have just expanded. So, they were going through a period of expansion, and they did all of their pork cutting on one day. So all of the butchers were pig after pig after pig. And usually what happens is one person, one pig. Because it's an order.
One person, one pig, one vote.
Yeah. But there will be things such as chops, or anything that is requiring a bone cut. Usually, in a more commercial butcher, rather than your high street butcher, they will take that meat cut to a bandsaw and cut through, which, unlike a hand hacksaw that a traditional butcher would use, it leaves a lot of fine bone dust on the cut, which the butcher then has to wipe off with a cloth of some variety. I can't remember the name.
It's like a tack cloth almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a specialist cloth that is really good at picking that bone dust off. A lot of the cuts we got back still had that bone dust. So it was more, I think there was a lot of haste probably when they were doing it.
Yeah, they
and
was
that due care and attention that you would expect possibly at a London restaurant, which you would hope that all butchers would work to, wasn't there.
And this was, because we spoke about this at some length afterwards, because it was, you were perfectly happy with the meat, and we were very happy with the meat as it was, but it was just, okay, as I'm breaking down your entire process from idea through to customer, and that whole chain, where those friction points were, and the butchery, which is a significant cost to you as well, isn't it, in the whole process?
Yeah.
It's like butchery and meat and feed are the two costs really in the whole thing, aren't they?
Yes. The main costs, which I've got...
We can go through later,
but because of how we pre-sold and sold both times, we still haven't got that right. It's getting some money in the bank firsthand to pay the butchery costs, so we're going out of pocket ourselves to cover these. And you do have a certain expectation. You've gone, this is quite a lump sum of money going towards you. And having been to, the local butcher, to supermarkets, getting meat boxes ourselves from other, great schemes, you have a certain level of expectation. It's going to come, it's going to look like this, this is the quality of care that the person who is looking after my animal, as I looked after it when it was alive, to provide back to me, just isn't there.
Do you think the fact that, as a very small scale producer, I mean, you're not just doing one house pig, but you are doing 6 or so at a time, 6 or so a year, that would factor into it. If you were running 6 pigs through that butcher every month, you're a repeat customer, you are worth a small secondhand or a very cheap secondhand car to them every month in invoice. Would they take more care maybe? Because you're a one-off customer, or once per year, you need your meat back no matter what, and they can't go back and make it a better cut, so you're getting what you're given.
Yeah. I think certainly at the most recent abattoir, that you're just small fry, or you're tacked on to these huge orders, and they do it like this, so yours is going to be like that. So this is the only way. Whereas again, the first butchers, they were doing our bespoke cutting, but some of the cuts were possibly new to the butchers because some, we thought they were general, but clearly not.
Maybe not to that particular corner of northeast Wales.
Yeah, exactly. And when they're cutting for 6 commercial butchers, and they're just flying through, your complicated little order tacked on the end, could be frustrating because it'll probably be done at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Once they've got theirs done.
I suppose that's what I'm sort of asking, is because it's a big deal to you. It's your big expense for that project. For them, it's the annoying job at the end of a Tuesday.
Yes.
When they're already busy.
Yeah.
And that difference in expectation is always something to be managed, or difference in perception is always going to have to be managed for small scale food producers.
Yeah, the requirement and need for both small scale abattoirs that can take small producers, but lots of them, and usually quite finicky, and folk with very specialist requirements, usually, because most small scale producers, they're either doing it just for themselves, or they are doing it for these bespoke box schemes or very high USB, products, because they have to market it in such a way to get a return on their initial sort of plan and investment and so on.
It's almost a chicken and egg, well, not quite chicken and egg, but sort of pull and push scenario that you don't have many small scale abattoirs anymore. Very few regional ones. We've got like 3 in North Wales, 4 in North Wales.
Yeah, and we're incredibly lucky for that.
Where we are, because if we're on Anglesey, 50 miles, 60 miles over to the west of here, there's no abattoirs left, are there?
Yeah. There are places in Essex, the nearest abattoirs in France.
Yes.
And Scotland is even worse. You're talking, some people travelling 6 hours to an abattoir.
Yeah, and they're just about, on the news today, there's a motion through Parliament to remove live export entirely.
Which?
We haven't got the abattoirs to kill the stock.
Yeah.
So you've got that, but because you haven't got the small scale abattoirs, which would more easily maybe support a huge network of small scale food producers, farmers, small scale farmers, lots of those smallholders, lots more of that 1930s style farming. There was more of that around. Because of that, you don't have a need for small scale butchers because you don't have the small scale farms. You only have larger scale farms really supporting larger scale abattoirs and butchers.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to plug into the wrong system, but it's the only system you have as a small scale producer.
And until you're more easily able to do at farm processing and selling, which you're not allowed to do for sale.
Yeah, because if you're from another country listening to this thinking, why don't you just kill it at home?
Yeah.
We're not allowed to, really.
Yeah. As the farmer, I could take an animal for our own table. I could kill it and process it and put up, cook it and eat it on my table. I could do the same thing, but feed you, and it would be illegal.
Yeah. In fact, I couldn't even help you do it.
No.
You would have to do it start to finish, your own animal for your own table, and I could be in the room and stand over there, but I couldn't touch it.
Yeah, a licensed butcher could do the work for me, but I can't sell that animal or parts thereof to anyone. And I think that is a huge problem with small producers in this country, that we can't do that, because I don't know at what point that came into law, but looking back at it, it's one of these bits of legal stuff that was probably put in for a very good reason that is now actually hampering growth of so many small producers.
I think I may be talking complete bollocks, and there's always that possibility, and it's often hovering right on the periphery of everything I'm saying. But I think it's that post-war modernization, forced modernization of farming. It was, well, you will modernize, No matter, you will turn into factory farms. You need to feed the nation. You need to feed the remains of the empire. You are going to learn how to maximize output from that field there, no matter what the ecological cost, no matter what the social cost. And small scale home kill doesn't feed the nation. It only feeds it only feeds 2 or 3 other people.
Yeah. So the abandoned cottage that we have on our land,
Yeah.
you know well, that has an outbuilding with a pig killing slate on it. For that express purpose. It was to process the animals, and that was probably done incredibly cleanly. But the legislation that larger abattoirs, because they've got that pull, that power, that the finances to possibly push ministers into certain directions that are more favourable to them, which then, through no direct fault, harms the smaller producers.
No.
And so we're sort of stuffed because of problems caused by the larger producers.
But the madness of the whole thing is that you could shoot a deer on your farm and butcher that in a semi-clean area, and you don't have to go through certain steps, and you can supply that into the food chain, no problem.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, or a pheasant or a
Rabbit.
rabbit.
Yeah, you can do a 2-day course. You've got your thing. You just have to maintain it. You probably won't be allowed to shoot it with lead soon, but
No.
243 copper round into a deer, fine. 243 copper round into a pig, no. It's madness.
It's very unjoined up thinking, and so some of this is just. It would be nice if things could go back to being looked at critically and regularly by the civil service, which is the government.
That's a big ask.
Yeah,
asking bureaucracy to actually do something sensible.
To do something sensible and to go back over things that they've set in stone would, sometimes I do wish the British farmer as a collective would be a bit more like the French farmers, who managed to get a legal ruling today where people moving out from the cities can no longer complain about the smell and the noise of farming.
I do kind of admire the French farmers' ability to just completely cover everything in manure and set fire to a sheep on a road. The moment they come across anything, the government does something they don't like.
Yes, there was a particularly nice one. I saw a tractor driving up an overpass, up the steps, and I suddenly went, tractors would be really good for urban warfare.
That's a different podcast.
Yes.
So you had the first year of the pigs.
Yes.
And I think it took us a few months to get through it. I think we recently found this summer, a last bag of the sausages from that, because the sausages were really good.
They were those first sausages. The butcher that we used that first year, they have won award for their sausages. They're very good at that.
Yeah.
The sausages from this lot are very tasty, but they just didn't offer any selection for, pork and leek, or, any flavourings. It was just plain.
You're getting pig
I believe there was the farmer's mix, but that was one we weren't going to choose.
That's so non-specific as well.
I know.
I don't want non-specific meat.
It's distressing.
So, second pigging, that was this year. Some point around about 12 months ago, you said, we're going to do pigs again.
Yes.
And we said, all right, we'll have a whole pig this time.
Yeah.
And then it was forgotten about. And then you got pregnant. Well, you didn't.
But no, yes. Yes.
Your wife did.
Yes.
And then
pigs became complicated.
Yes, because then you had more things to deal with.
Yeah.
And when did we start with the pigs? April, May?
So we got them. Well, I'm going to say the pigs arrived at end of June, so almost start of July, I think, off the top of my hand.
So was it June when we were thrashing around with the brush cutters and?
So yeah, I'd long identified where we were going to put them, because the paddocks that we chose this year would have been the ones that we moved the original ones to. It was the best area for it. It was the next nearest place that we could put them. It was next to a track, so it was nice and easy access. It was on a slope, so we could do. Water was much easier.
Gravity was
gravity feed water, and yeah, it wasn't a particularly overgrown bit of woodland. It wasn't a mature woodland. The trees in them are
5 meter space.
30 years old. I'm going to say, possibly thought 40 at a push. No, actually, no, 30 years old, because I think they were planted when I was 12. I'm now 40. So there you go. You do the maths. Listener, that is. And their spacing is such that there's a lot of bramble, but not much else in there in terms of the ground layer.
No, and we had an agreement quite early on that was, this is going to be more work for you to manage because of the slope, because of the distance from the house, and because of the work that was needed to make the pen. I will work for Pig.
Yeah, so there was your work for Pig, and then there was various events when I was doing things where it was, I'm doing this, do you want to get involved? We're talking about the brush cutting, so when we were cutting the tracks where we were going to put the wires, and so we decided on a paddock system where we could move the animals every so often. So we needed multiple small areas within this woodland block. So we were cutting through brambles to make the laneways for these animals to for the fences.
We're having a brief interlude now where Alistair looks up when we were doing the pig penning. Or are you looking at where the pigs arrived, or when we were doing the pig penning?
A combination of that.
Okay. So I said I'd get involved in various things. One of the things was I got annoyed at you quite early on because you were just going to use some random old bit of sheep hurdle as a gate.
Yes.
So you also, in the similar time frame, you'd acquired a giant woodland mill. So you could take roundwood timber and saw it into perfectly square timber of anything up to 8 inch by 8 inch, 4 meters long, 5 meters long, whatever it is. So you could make planks, and you had all of this, and you had all this wood from where we've been playing around with it and trying to learn how to use it without killing ourselves, which wasn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
Have you got a date?
So I've got photos of you holding a blade for this mill on the 12th of June. So it can't have been that far off that. So.
I got a feeling it was like early summer was when we were playing around with the mill and the pigs were coming.
Yes, so the first photos I've got, the pigs are on the 18th of June.
Okay. So sometime before. So May into June was probably when we were doing the prep. And I got annoyed with you because you were going to use a sheep hurdle, and I said you can make a gate. You said, well, let's make a gate. And I said, okay, well, we'll use this random bit of wood to make a gate with, without realising it is possibly one of the toughest woods known to man.
Yes. But we had a great day. You showed off your fine carpentry skills.
And getting angry.
Yes.
With a mortar, because it was a wood that was simultaneously bouncy, but also incredibly tough. So you're chopping into it with a razor sharp chisel, and it's just bouncing off it.
Yes. But you made a lovely gate that I improved a little bit of, and then I managed to get annoyed at the speed of your creation of gate, probably based again on that wood choice, where I knocked up 4 quite quickly, based on a traditional sort of sheep hurdle.
Yeah, but your gates look terrible.
They do. They are not aesthetically good. They are functional.
Is amazing.
It is beautiful.
I was annoyed by the fact that then you installed it by just putting 2 rotten fence posts in the ground and
tying metal ties to hold it on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen your shed full of hinges. I've seen your shed full of tools. I've seen you have all these fence posts, and you still took my beautiful work of art of a gate and strapped it to basically matchsticks.
But the plan is to move those gates as well, so it may find a better home. I'm going to come possibly with some hinges.
I'm going to come to a farm in the middle of the night and install the gate properly because it irks me. So we first things were to map out the paddocks, and I quite like your plan for this because you had a giant rectangle, probably about the size of a football field, soccer pitch, total,
Yep.
and then split it with a cross in the middle, so you had 4 rectangular paddocks.
Yep.
And if you name them 1, 2, 3, 4, I think the idea is you put pigs into paddock 1 first.
Yep.
Then they go down the hill into number 2, and then along the hill into number 3, back up the hill to number 4, and then across back into 1. And then
Yep.
you could rotate them between the paddocks.
Yeah.
And I remember the lots of drawing this out with sticks and mud, trying to explain this and working out, well, we have to go from this post to this tree to that tree. And I'd run around with spray paint and tree marking paint and mark it at head height, and then you'd follow along with a brush cutter.
Yes. So the original plan was to have, if you imagine a giant square, a cross in the middle with gates at the end of the cross in the middle to facilitate the moving around.
Yeah, a little diamond shape.
After much strimming and annoyance with trees not being in the right place, we moved those gateways to the centre, where we had a central corral, which in hindsight actually was quite good because it allowed us to deal with, when we did have one sick pig, it allowed us to corral that and get that away quite easily. And we'll try and find some photos, maybe.
I have photos. There'll be photos on photos. If you go to the links in the notes, it'll go to take you to the blog post accompanying this episode. There you'll find photos, possibly me looking unhappy and slightly balding, leaning over that gate.
But yeah, the central zone also allowed a quick moving of the food troughs, the water point, and the infrastructure through.
Like a
Whereas
nexus.
if the gates had been on the edges, which might have worked still, it was just very convenient having that central set of 4 gates, because then I could open gates and go from, if I wanted to go from 1 to 4 instead of 1 to 2, I could have, which wouldn't have been possible in the first one.
It works so well, it looks like you designed it that way in the first place.
Yes.
Even though it was definitely not, was it?
No. So yeah, the paddocks were designed with that setup in mind. Because of ash dieback, this plantation was quite heavy with ash. We used a combination of insulated straight into ash trees and just added, again, old oak posts, which I scavenged, plus the odd bit of rebar with plastic insulators that you can. That's a very good way of creating a fence.
And because of the terrain, you had to, for this fence line, you had to work out how the straight line between all these points would work. Sometimes there would be a dip in between those 2 anchor points.
Yeah, the undulations were fun. We attempted, rather than it being a bullet straight line, it was more the line followed the contour because it was on a hill. So it was more contour related, which actually, when you're dealing with hills and slopes, is a much better way of designing fences than going straight line. Even though you might use a bit more materials, the way that you and livestock and animals and vegetation adapts to that terrain means that it's a bit easier for everyone if you're following the contour.
It felt like a very organic process, but it felt very natural. It didn't feel forced. It's sort of just, okay, we have to go around this here, around that there. This won't be this is actually going to be we'll take the diagonal off this corner. It won't be a hard corner because I've got 2 anchor points, but I haven't got one in the middle. Yeah. So we come up to here, and then it's just take the chamfer off. You lose a little bit of paddock, but
yeah, where there were sort of major undulations were where we were fighting. We were going off contour. We were trying to change direction, or we were sort of trying to avoid something.
I think the hardest parts were probably trying to get the wire, because once the wire was in the insulators, get the wire back down to the height.
Yes.
Where it went over a low point. Because if it goes over a high point in the ground, you can just put another post in and lift it.
Yeah.
But if it goes down, you've got to sort of
tension it down,
hook it down, and bring it down to that.
Yeah, there's not many good man-made devices that do that very well. Trees obviously are great for that, but
no,
anything that you stick into the ground will try and pull out.
Yeah, all electric fence posts are designed to hold wire up, not hold wire down.
Yeah, there are for the avid listener. There is a company called Kiwi Tech that do a very good one that is as an arrow kind of anchor that's designed to go in, and then the sort of anchor opens out to prevent uplift. But we're not that spendy.
It's out width of the budget of this project.
Yes, very much so.
It was, if it doesn't exist on the farm at the start of the project, it wasn't going in.
Yeah, a lot of the infrastructure for pigs part 2 was very much, we reused the wire from the first pig paddock plus a little bit of old wrapper metal wire that we had lying around. So again, shoestring budget for the paddock creation. The water drinkers, we'd already purchased the nipple bits, so we finally got around to creating these green barrel drinkers, which is your memory of hanging inside a barrel, drilling out. The feed troughs we'd again purchased previously and or used a combination of sheep troughs that we already had, which actually were pig troughs originally. And a happenstance.
The circular economy of your farm.
The circular any farm really is things come back to life after a period of inactivity.
Some people see a scrap heap, other people just see sort of a degenerative storage area.
Yeah, it'll be useful.
Yeah.
Just don't know when.
Sometimes it'll just be useful as a heavy thing.
Yes.
To anchor something else to. Yeah.
So, and this time we there was the intent to create structures for them, but actually the pigs found shade and shelter amongst the trees quite happily on their own, and it was only the week before their one final day that I attempted to put a tarp up because the weather was that foul, and it was one of these named storms that they like using, and the pigs promptly just saw the blue tarp and pulled it down. So
killed it.
Yeah, they killed it. So that would be the only infrastructure improvement that I would have done this time is, or to change for next time is something a bit more substantial, pre-planned, and maybe less mobile, but at least deconstructible. But I dislike screwing things into trees normally.
The pre-existing shelter options from that, it was a perfect area for them, really, because you had that huge downed oak. Was it an oak in the middle?
Yes,
an oak. They made use of pretty quickly. You could see where their little wallow area was, and their sleeping area was in the lee of that. Yeah,
the pigs did a 3-week rotation amongst the paddocks. It was 2 weeks was the advice given to me by the wonderful Jordan Green, a farm builder, who's been a great mentor to me. Various Instagram messages fired back and forth because he's probably one of the best woodland pig breeders in the world, probably.
Hopefully there's a link for that in the notes for this.
Yeah, and he was an original student, I believe, of Joel Salatin.
Okay.
Who you may have come across. They started off in this first paddock, and they rotated around. And when they were big pigs, they were back in that first paddock. And because going back to that ground layer of vegetation that was so stripped in pigs part 1, the pigs actually hadn't done a lot when they were piglets and small little animals in the first paddock because of the size. So actually, the paddock sizes that we chose were probably just too big for the number of pigs we had, and we could have probably had 1 or 2 more and just had them slightly smaller. But yeah, they got back in and really took advantage of that fallen oak when they were much larger pigs.
Yeah, that size difference as they grew, because it's funny that when they grow they get bigger. But how much devastation they caused to the undergrowth?
Yeah, they
was proportionate to the size, wasn't it?
Yeah, they go from sort of an annoyance, should we say, to the vegetation to just destructors.
Yeah.
It really is.
They learned that habitat because it was a habitat, really. It wasn't a pen. It was they are pigs in a wood, just they can't go beyond that electric fence.
Yeah.
It was, you could look at that in, say, mid-August and say, yep, that's still a pretty overgrown woodland, and there happens to be pigs there.
Yeah, it's like that bit out of Jurassic Park when they're walking through the grassland and there's just rustling.
Yes.
You know, it was very much like that at the beginning.
When you were going down to feed them and trying to feed them in that middle area, you'd walk down with the bucket of feed, and you would hear a rustling over there, and then it would be coming towards you in a line, and then a pig would burst out and try and take out your feet.
Yes. Yeah, and it got worse as they got bigger.
Yeah.
They become sort of steam trains.
So let's talk about the pig fighting.
The pig fighting.
So you put the pigs in the training area again.
Ah, yes, that.
Now I want to talk about this with you, because we seem to have very different recollections of how all this went down.
Yeah,
I blame you.
That's fair.
You seem to blame me.
Yes. So, listeners, I'd concocted, as I do, I plan things out in my head very exactly, and I can see how they're going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I had a wonderful plan.
Mm.
The plan did not survive first contact for two reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The first was incredible inclement weather. It was raining cats and dogs. And the second one was Richard, who, because of the weather, subverted the plan to speed it up in his mind, because he saw it slightly differently, I would say. And
I'm letting this unfold.
Yeah.
You know.
So we were moving these 12 pigs from holding little training area into the back of a trailer, which was getting wetter by the second.
Mm.
The training area, although it had started lush grass and so on, in the torrential rain, was fast becoming like the Somme.
It did look like General Haig was in charge of it.
The pigs, because of this, were now wet and muddy and consequently slippery. When trying to put pigs into a trailer that have decided they've looked at it and they didn't particularly like it and didn't want to go in, and we were using pig boards and so on and so forth. But the infrastructure that we put up to get them into the trailer became a bit porous, and certain pigs decided to escape and do their best sort of Tom, Dick and Harry.
Infrastructure's a rather grand word for random bits of ironwork you had lying about the place, including old school chairs, a gate with not enough bits in it, some rusted metal, some bits of chicken wire I think was in there. The pig boards that we needed to shuttle them around were also being used as fence, and a trailer that wasn't quite angled on properly.
Yes. And it all...
Which bit of that was my fault? I can't remember.
It was somewhere in the middle. There was. You sped up the operation, and I can't remember what part of it was, but it was probably get them to here, do that, then do that second step.
I'm loving the fact that my very non-specific blame here.
Yeah.
But you can't quite remember what it was, and your pigs with your
This is
trailer
why
in
you
your
wanted
field.
to do the podcast, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Either way, it ended up with a very rustling hedge, a very angry man, and a very slippery pig, causing havoc in the dark by this point.
Yes.
And shouts of "You will be my bacon," as we literally grabbed the pig, manhandle. I think I ended up catching it. My wife was helping.
Your heavily pregnant,
very heavily pregnant wife was helping as well.
Yes.
She was somewhere in the hedge with you at one point.
There was a point where I was facing a pig, very close to it, and to my one side of me was your heavily pregnant wife, who was very angry with me and the pig. I'm not sure why she was angry with me, because it's not my pig. It's not my pig, it's not my hedge, it's not my field. I'm just here to help. But she's angry with me for some reason. And I think it's because I was being angry with the pig. It's like, no, the pig and I have history now. She arrived during the process. I am already angry with this pig. And I'm looking at the pig, and I'm looking at your wife, and I'm working out which way I want to go. Which is...
Save the wife or catch the pig?
kind of, but I think your wife was going to handle it quite well. It was like, if one of them's going to go for me, I don't know which one do I use the pig board on, because I had a stick and a pig board, and I'm like on my hands and knees in the hedge, looking at a pig and looking at your wife, and it's like, I don't know which way this is going to go.
And somewhere in the middle of that, I somehow get my hand on the back leg of the pig and just start yoinking.
That's Alice's alarm for his sourdough.
That is my sourdough alarm.
Such an incredibly middle-class alarm.
It's just the one that works. Oh well, never mind. The sourdough might, I'm sure, will
So you
survive.
yank the pig out. This, I think, I had to be at dinner somewhere an hour early.
Yes, I'm here for an hour. I've only got an hour, which is possibly why you tried to speed up my original plan. That's possibly where the speed and haste got in, which meant. So yeah, if you're loading pigs in the future, give plenty of time. Give the pigs plenty of time, and don't do it in the dark, in the rain. Just if it gets to that, cancel it and reset.
Mm.
But anyway, the pig got in the trailer. The pigs moved to the new paddock, and all was well.
Yeah, so they were all fine there. We went through a summer of feeding the pigs. There was some minor misadventures.
Yeah, there was one pig who we found getting bullied and was gradually shrinking in stature, whereas the others were putting on weight. And there is a wonderful pastured pig group, secretive pig group that some very impressive and knowledgeable folk who are being great sounding boards for and have helped me a lot, gave advice, and they suggested that it could be laurel poisoning, which made sense as there was a giant
huge
laurel tree that they were camping beneath in the second paddock.
Yep.
So again, part of that infrastructure, we might have to adapt that one for next time.
The tree of death in the middle of the paddock.
The tree of death. So that pig came down for some TLC and it bounced back and became yard pig, which is now in my freezer.
You say it came down like that was an easy operation. It was. We go into the paddocks. I fight 11 pigs. You grab ill pig, run up the hill carrying quite a heavy pig, jump into the back of the gator with holding the, like you were spooning a pig in the back of the gator.
Yes, I needed, someone commentating sort of cage fight style, because I'm there in a full jiu-jitsu kind of hold.
Oh yeah.
Beneath this pig who is doing its damnedest to get out of the hold.
Yep.
As you drive the gator
carefully,
with haste.
And this is at sun. Well, this is
again
dusk
dark
as well. Why is it half an hour after sunset? You're spooning a pig. I'm driving a gator of dubious maintenance down a very slippery slope, thinking, at least I've chosen my life to be this way.
Well, it's your day. It's your day job. Is somewhere else, and you usually tack on me and come and annoy me / lend assistance. Very thankfully in many cases.
Recreational agriculture at your house. Yeah,
you just come and poke me and see what fun I.
Well, there's always something going on. So there was one ill pig, and there was the incident where I got stuck and nearly eaten by the pigs. Did I tell you about this?
Was this when I was away?
It was whilst you were away delivering your child.
No, then you didn't.
So the water, big IBC tank at the top of the hill.
Right. So I thought you were about to say waters are broken. No, probably had.
Refilled. You'd have to turn the tap on, walk down the hill. There was a hose already there. Put it into the big barrel for the pig's water. Make sure it's filled up. All fine. The hole into the top of this barrel is roughly cut open flap of plastic that you can shove your arm easily in there and out of there.
Yes, so it's probably 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters.
That's smaller even.
It's smaller, but the flap of the plastic is still there.
Yeah,
sort of.
It's whenever in one of my shirts, my reasonable, quite sizable forearm.
Yes, which is beyond 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters.
Goes in, and doesn't come out again. And I got myself trapped with my arm in the barrel with the hose. It was slowly filling up, so my hand's now in the cold water, getting cold. And the pigs are starting to eat around at my feet. So I'm strapped to this barrel, which is strapped to a tree.
Yes.
Kicking pigs and thinking, this is how I'll die. I'll be slowly eaten by pigs in a barrel. So,
I think both of us, you for this situation and me, there was a particularly bitey pig as well.
Yes.
Which had we knew it as tails because its tail had been bitten off, probably because it had been biting someone else, but who was particularly good at ankle snapping and trying to eat your shoe with you in it, which wasn't great.
No.
Especially when it was muddy and your boot got stuck and then they came for you. That happened to me.
We didn't... It was getting precarious being in there. And there was sort of if you were frail or if you were not great on your feet, you probably shouldn't go down the muddy slope in with the 12 pigs.
No. So, so my child had been born, and often, with a small 1-month-old, you can strap them to your chest and carry on doing things. Feeding the pigs was a great joy to the child. Probably not the greatest life decision when they were constantly trying to trip you over to eat you. I think by this point they'd given up on the food that we were giving them and saw us as a great game to try and trip over.
Yeah, they were. I think they started to work out what was, what was going to happen. They were sort of teasing the prison camp guard.
Yes, very much. What if you run in front and I'll go for his legs at the back and we'll see if we can knock him over? No. At no point did I have to abandon the food. That was the.
I've heard of that. Yeah, I've had that with sheep, feeding people sheep in the past. If you walk into the wrong field of sheep with a bag, you'll end up being sort of crowd surfing on the back of sheep.
Yes. Well, the pigs were this is these animals. Towards the end, they're getting 100 kilos of pure muscle mostly, and they are full 4-wheel drive in these conditions. Whereas, it's muddy, slippery on a slope now. They've cleared all the vegetation. They have made it their battleground, not yours, and they know the terrain.
Yes. They spent.
We were very much at a disadvantage.
They were born into the darkness. We merely adopted it.
Yes. Yes.
And so that was no more evident than it was the time to separate out the first 6.
Yeah.
Into the.
So the pigs originally, these piglets, when we got them, came from the same farm and same breeder that we got the first batch from, who we probably will buy from again. Great little local chap. But the first batch, we'd managed to get all the same sex, whereas this batch, second batch, was a mixture of males and females. And with certain animals, especially pigs, there is something that happens to the meat when the males get to maturity of when they get to breeding maturity, there is something that is known as boar taint, which is what happens when the males, the boars, come into that sort of sexual maturity.
Pig puberty.
We had 5 males actually, I think it was, who were all intact. You can sort of spay and make them sort of eunuchs. We hadn't done that. We don't know how to do that. It wasn't something that we were set up to do or had planned to deal with. It might be a thing for the future, but we needed to get the males out. And also we'd worked out that our trailer, based on my car towing ability, based on the previous pigs, could hold 6 animals. So that was the plan, get 6 out. And we had 12 animals. The original plan was for 10. We were sort of not gifted, but slightly pushed into 12. So the first lot went off.
But it wasn't entirely straightforward.
No, we were. Was this the?
You had friends, people who were buying pig bits.
Yes, so we realised that to load and separate, it was a many hands make light work plan. There was a plan put in place. Everyone turned up, not at the right time, but in dribs and drabs, which was also part of the issues of loading. And then we had the random walkers who turned up.
Yeah, so picture the scene. It is a slopey, mud-filled woodland that is now devoid of vegetation. There's electric fences on 3 sides, well, most of 4 sides, and then a small gap into a smaller pen where we were going to try and shuttle half of the pigs into. And there's a couple of helpers, varying degrees of agricultural experience. And then there's Alistair and I basically playing rugger.
Yeah, there's competent people, incompetent people, us probably somewhere in the middle with just sort of gusto.
Yeah. What we lacked in experience, we certainly made up for in enthusiasm.
Yeah. So again, the wife and small child was there. Some enthusiastic but complete novice people. So extra pairs of hands, really, who were useful to some degree. And they did a very good job helping out. And I don't think we would have done it as well that day if they hadn't been there with that plan. We made a new plan for the second lot, which worked beautifully.
Because I think some of it had been using sheep psychology and sheep handling techniques on
for pigs who didn't want to move, didn't want to leave, and just wanted to play.
It's more like cows, I think, for these.
Yeah,
These
probably. Well, just pigs, probably. Even cows, I think, are a bit more.
I suppose it's
manageable.
Pigs are forward-facing eyes.
Yeah,
and they are suspicious of you.
Well, also they're so short-sighted. Well, I presume they're short-sighted.
They smell. They know where you are. They know
pig sticks and pig boards.
I remember spending quite a lot of time. It was those last 2 pigs getting them up the hill.
Yeah, the fewer the number, the harder it got.
Because there was less herd to...
Yeah, they couldn't follow each other. They were getting more and more scared, more and more het up, less and less able to work out what they were doing, and sort of the red mist of terror crept up, and they did not want to do anything that we wanted them to do.
Which at the end, I mean, it's like slightly amusing and type 2 fun while you're doing it, but it is, look, I am herding you towards your death. I'm trying to make it painless. Yes. I'm trying to make it as easy for everyone here.
Yeah. This is meant to be slow and steady. There is meant to be no, heightened blood pressures. Let's do this as calmly as possible. As much will in the world as it was, this was not calm.
No.
This was the opposite of the duck sitting on top of the water. This was the feet going 9 million miles an hour.
Yeah.
And everything going wrong constantly.
Running around in heavy boots and heavy mud.
Like
swearing.
Like that, rugby pitch on a sort of Sunday night under lights with 12 sweaty men trying to get a ball.
Yeah,
in this case, it was a pig.
It was proper bottom league rugby where there hasn't been grass on that bit of the pitch for a long time. No. It did feel like rugby was the best analogy I could think of, but
except for you're wearing wellies, which are useless in the mud.
Yeah, and it's like if I catch this pig and it's not going in the right direction, I might kill it.
Or it's going to drag you through the electric fence, which is going to not be fun.
Oh yeah, because I think there's like quite a big pig stick as well. It's like, I could lose a finger in this fight quite easily here, or lose a chunk of leg.
Yes,
because they will, you don't.
Well, they've got big tusks by this point. Well, big teeth at least.
Yeah. It's not an easy proposition, but got them down, off to the abattoir.
Yep.
And different. So this time, the butcher is associated with the abattoir. Is that right?
Yeah. So this, we used a different abattoir, which has a conjoined butchery as part of it. So they offer as with the other abattoir, they offer the service that it can be then sent to a butcher of your choice, or the butchers themselves ordering it, or they can do the cutting themselves. Unlike the first butcher, who could do bespoke cutting. This was very much, here is an outline of a pig. We can do it this, this, and this. Which
So just draw a pig and then
was
dotted lines.
again when we opened some of the pig boxes up to check the contents, you're pulling out items and you're like, what is, this cut of meat doesn't match again any of those videos, but at least it's well presented.
It was immediately, even just opening those first boxes, it was immediately apparent that this was a different quality of butchery. It was a different quality.
Yeah. So unlike the first butcher where that one guy would be processing that one pig from whole to parts, this was very much a commercial conveyor belt of cutting. So, let's say the back legs were taken off. Butcher A would have the back legs, and he would only work the back legs.
Yeah.
Butcher B would get the next bit of the carcass, and so he would have the chops, and then butchers. So it was, I think that's how it was done. It feels like that's how it was done.
And I think so. Looking at the way everything came out and the weights on those boxes, I think you have a higher likelihood that the whole pig we have in our box.
Is
probably a pig.
Yes,
it's probably from one contingent animal.
Yeah, I think
Contiguous animal, not contingent.
But I think that was partly, more at our end of the scale. Their boxing facility, with it not being COVID as well, they're processing their ability to put the right thing in the right place without having too many problems was very easy.
Yeah. It was an upgrading experience, but for the customer and
there was still a bunch of things that, again, still no labeling on the cuts.
No.
So I'm a bit more accustomed to know what the cuts are, but it's still, is that part of the front leg or is that part of the back leg?
If I cut into this, is there a bone in the middle?
Yeah.
Is there, or is this just rolled meat of some type?
So unlike a sheep carcass, every bit of that I could tell you when presented with it on my plate where that came from. Yeah. Some of these cuts I'm still, could it come from there?
Yeah, a sheep carcass you could put back together with cocktail sticks and make a sheep shape.
Yeah, and one of the customers that came to do the original capturing of the first 6 pigs, they came to pick up theirs, and again, it was like, well, we'd love to have labelled these for you, but we don't know what they are.
Yeah,
and that's a big problem for us first timers, because if you get to know a high street butcher, let's say, or an individual butcher, and you can work with them, they can talk you through what the cuts are as a first timer. They can say, I'm now going to process this in front of you, possibly, and this is this, this is this, this is this. This butchery style is very much removed. It's so quick and done that there isn't that. I don't think there's even an opening to be able to do that back learning procedure with these guys. So going forward, if and when we do pigs again, which I think we probably will, we enjoyed the process. It needs some tweaking, as I'm sure you'll know. Who does the cutting is going to come back around, and it probably won't be the same people. We will probably approach another butcher, but instead of just taking their basic price, it's see their basic price and say, actually, we want to have this, this, and this done, and we are going to pay over above to get that quality, that finish, that expectation, even that labeling on every individual one, just so that when it comes back to us, for us to put our specific labels on, the farm label, the weights and things like that, even the weights of the meat, by law, if we're keeping it in a commercial freezer, we have to put the weight on to sell to other people. If it goes as a whole box, it's all right to have a single label on the outside, but each individual cut, each individual vac pack should be labelled with what it is and what weight it is.
Yeah, so you can trace it. And
So whoever is in the kitchen turning that into putting it on your plate can see, oh, it's a 1 kilo whatever when it was frozen. So I know that's going to feed 4 people, or I'll put that aside and that's my, pig for Christmas dinner. Or
because the way that our pig from that product that we have at the moment is about perfect for us. So we can everything's in bags or vacuum packed in the freezer. Sausages are into the portions that we have for a meal for 2 of us.
Yeah.
And it's just, okay, well, this is a bigger chunk of pig, this is a smaller chunk of pig. The bacon, I think, have you delivered bacon today?
No, the bacon is ready for pickup.
Right, 3-week delay on the bacon?
Yeah, so the bacon curing process is about a month.
Right.
Off the top of my head, which when you're doing deliveries, you suddenly get a double delivery that you need to plan.
Yeah.
And again, the pickup. So going just thinking about expenses, not only have you got to take the animals to the abattoir, you then need to pick them up from the butcher. And in this case, we had 2 trips to the abattoir. And then you've got the pickup, which you aided us with your vehicle because mine was in the garage getting fettled. You've got a double pickup because there's 2 groups of pigs coming back at different times, and then we've got the bacon on top, so there's 3 return journeys for the delivery and pickup as well to be accounted for, which suddenly quite a few man hours when you're doing...
and travelling back and forth across the county doing it.
Yeah, but at least you don't have a trailer on for the pickups.
So we've got 2 years, not next to each other, but 2 years of pigging.
Yes.
And we ourselves have had a pig and a half.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, what was the point of all this? I mean, so what are your points, your quick points? Because I've got some to add in.
Yeah, so quick points were make use of the woodland space for not just timber or fire, wood products, let's call it.
And this didn't impinge on the sheep.
Utilise this dead space that isn't making any money.
Yeah.
So value add by putting a livestock on there that can create extra funds. Provide a second string of food for both us and other like-minded people, because every additional food type that we can add to our sort of range of products means that we're more likely to sell possibly another part of the range. So if someone's bought a pig, they might also want a bit of lamb, and they might also get in the egg club.
You're baiting more hooks, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. We are offering more products, and that adds to our story and sort of unique selling points that we are trying to offer at home. And then the big add-on was the impact that the animals have done in the woodland, and hoping to, with some added forestry management tasks, to change what was just pure brambles into something that is more biodiverse, a different habitat, and one that can maybe house the sheep over winter. Or it can grow some grass, or something else can grow there, which can then hold another animal type, or even pigs in the future, for longer, or have more nutrition than that monocrop of brambles.
Yeah. Because that monocrop of brambles, at some point we'd have had to get in there, because we've got trees to fell in there this winter with yourself, and some thinning to do. And
well, brambles die off in the winter usually, but it's that access in the spring, the summer, that you know, throughout the thing, when you want to be marking up the trees, you want to be planning the winter stuff. You don't want to be doing the planning in the winter.
Yeah, and there's other vegetation, and the brambles never do quite go away fully. And
yeah, they're just a trip hazard. Whereas most of them are gone now. There's a few remain here and there, but I'd say 90% of them and their tuber roots have gone.
Yep.
And if you're picturing this is now, Alistair has removed an entire swathe of habitat. If you to visit this place, it's nothing but habitat. There's too much habitat in a way. You've got this is a small cleared area flanked on all sides by banks of vegetation and untouched habitat for decades. Yeah, so it was a very focused area. So there's a
great trial area.
It's a great trial area, but also the access into there is fine because that big fallen oak will now be able to cut down the small trees around it, assemble the mill around this oak, and get a shed's worth of timber out of it.
Yeah, save that tree from a costly extraction point to something that actually will be cash positive, will probably make us products that we can use here on the farm for ourselves for very little cash input.
Without any soil compaction as well, because I think that's a key part to this, is that you have effectively ploughed in between the trees without removing the trees, without bringing in machinery onto site.
Yeah, very low impact.
Completely turn that soil. That means that as a seed bed, it's pretty good. Next spring, that's going to be very interesting what comes up in there.
Yeah.
But also that lack of compaction is really important. Because if you only have to look at where forestry tracks are, even with modern forestry machinery that's relatively low footprint compared to what it was 50 years ago, well, maybe not 50 years ago, 40, 30 years ago, it still compacts the soil a lot, and you end up with water running down those tracks and down off the hill.
Yeah. If you can loosely imagine that the bramble covered landscape was fairly, call it flat. Let's say it's fairly flat. So any and all rainfall that was landing on that had by the time the soil had reached water holding capacity, it would just flow along the top of the soil. There is now ruts, there's wallows, there's
pockets.
There's pockets. Every sort of hoof trip and track that they created, that bit of land, even though there's very little greenery on it now, is holding a significant volume of water more than it was before the pigs went in.
In fact, it's perfectly set up for coppicing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even it's not necessarily the right plantation for it, but now seeing how those pigs have engineered that landscape.
Yeah.
Means that you go, okay, so I know what will happen to something that looks like this with this many pigs that are this size for this long.
Yeah.
You can then take that and go, bloop, drop it onto another bit of hazel woodland, say, and then come along at this time of year, coppice it all, and have another product that can come along after it. So it could be part of your management rotation.
Value-adding management going forward, yeah, very much so.
So whereas if you do that we could do that with a brush cutter, and we'd end up with probably a ding blade and lots burning up through fuel and lots of noise and smoke and nothing to show for it other than sweat. Whereas this way, you get meat.
Also, going back to the brambles, I know we're talking about them quite a lot. There
were a lot of brambles.
If you strim brambles, every bit of that bramble plant has the ability to regenerate into a brand new plant if it gets into soil contact. It's a particularly virulent little plant for doing that.
Yeah.
Which means that if we'd gone in there beyond what we did with our brush cutters, we'd be causing ourselves more problems down the line. Whereas now the pigs have, bar where we strimmed, have done a significant volume of removing that plant species from that zone, which will give more opportunity for other things to come in.
Yeah. And even being able to move around and access that on foot now means you can look at it in a different way, and you can be more selective in your management in the future.
Yeah. And we can hopefully take that trial in that non-triple SI area, show it to the powers that be, to allow us to go into the areas that actually pigs would have been very much more used to being put out for, a pannage, which is under the old oak trees and things that are in areas that we're not allowed to use them in.
Yeah.
And therefore we can do better management for the whole woodland rather than just specific bits.
because pigs under trees in Europe is not a quirky modern idea. This is thousands of years old.
Yeah.
This has been going along as long as people have been managing woodlands, and this is why, again, in Europe, we don't have the huge untouched virgin forests of North America. We have tightly managed woodland over thousands of years because that is part of the farming culture. The woodlands were managed as intensively as the farm because it was the products you needed came from there, and pigs were part of that.
Yeah.
So on the financial side of this,
yes, yeah.
So we won't go into the exact figures because it doesn't really matter. If you look at it in terms of proportion, the pigs you were selling, the pig box of meat,
yes,
was 30% more expensive, maybe, than if you went online and found the average cheapest price for a pig box of products.
Yeah.
Which I think if you're going through this process and you're the sort of person that's listened through all this whole episode and you listen to this podcast and you're interested in what we want to do with, I want to know where my meat comes from. Price is not a primary factor. It's a secondary factor at best.
Yeah.
I mean, price always comes into it because eventually you run out of money. You've got to put your money to the right things. But whether a couple of £100 for a pig, there's a small chest freezer's full of meat. You know, it's a significant amount. Whether that is a difference, whether there's 70 quid difference makes it, I'll have to buy it from here rather than from here. Having seen your costs on those things, so I was seeing roughly how high that stack of feed was in the corner of the shed, that you had this feed dropped off, and I was looking at it going, okay, blimey, how are you going to get through that much? But really, when you see the feed had to increase as the pigs got bigger, you were feeding them getting to the point where it started off, it was an easy handful to carry up in the bucket to, this might be 2 trips on foot, or I'll have to take the gator to take enough feed to feed them at the end. Yeah. So there's a hell of a lot of feed in there. The butchery costs, it's into the thousands for pigs.
Yeah. I think just I'm pulling up a few things on my phone here. The cost of the feed was well over £1,000. That was growing exponentially, as you said, just for those 6. If I can find it here, the butchery costs were easily just shy of 50% of the cost of that pig for the price that we put out. Now, compared to other people doing the similar sort of selling points, Woodland raised pork, we're not organic, so we didn't feed organic food. That would have almost doubled the cost probably. But to raise the animals in the methods that we have, which was trying to give them the best quality of life without being completely free range, which you can't really do in this country anyway, and to sort of raise them, allowing them to have the pigness of the pig, as Joel Salatin says, to give them a happy life as best as you can. Sort of allow an animal, call it happy, because you can't tell if they're happy, but to do that and also make it financially viable to do. Because at the end of the day, you can't. There's a great saying that you can't be green if you're in the red. Yeah, it's got to make ends meet. And as this is our first serious. This year's batch is our first serious look at it being a proper enterprise where we tried to cover most of the facts and figures. We were reusing a lot of stuff that we already had, so there are some hidden figures that aren't accounted for, which you've seen some of our stuff and made some sort of comments that we've not accounted for something and so on.
Well, because even at a very basic level, like you already own the land. Yeah. If you were trying to do this on a tenanted farm, you've got a cost of the land on top of that and stuff like that.
And the labour, which was something you highlighted,
How was that? Yeah, the gator. Yeah. In fact, you had a gator to go up and down the hill.
Yeah, so shared infrastructure, which allows the whole enterprise to work, is very useful. You know, because we didn't account for the energizer because we already had one.
Yeah.
We built that into our cost structure initially to make sure that we got enough pigs to cover that. So in theory, for next set of pigs, we should be able to buy an energizer.
Yeah, because I mean, there are two ways of looking at those sort of capital costs as well, like land and the gator and things like that. That one, it's something you already owned,
Yeah.
so, or it was an asset that was there. So should that be in your calculations for your profit at the end of the pig year? But another way to look at it is that you found a way to monetize the existence of that thing.
Yeah.
You found a way for that thing to be useful in a hopefully cash generating enterprise, whereas if it sat in the yard, it's not, theoretically, it's not degrading. Might be rusting slowly, but it's not wear and tear on the machine. But it's also not generating it's not being useful. It's being potentially useful, and you've taken potentially useful into actually useful by driving up and down the hill. But it's, from a business point of view, that's like my business hat on, it's very difficult to quantify the sort of the financial utility of that. You can't rent it to yourself at £15 an hour because
so there's a lot of complicated financials that we didn't account for. We've sort of rounded off and rounded up and rounded down.
I don't think you can in agriculture. The true cost of agriculture, it's not necessarily financial.
Yeah, so I've just pulled something up here. So the butchery costs were just shy of 50%. The feed costs were about 15%.
Okay.
Buying the pigs themselves was about 12%. And then, what did I say? Feed cost was about 30%. And so there's, have I got labour in here? So yeah, labour's about 15%.
Yeah.
So
and that was your labour.
That was based on an hour a day plus an hour per week for dealing with water and or fetching feed from the shops and things like that. So very basic labour costs to add into it.
Yeah. And again,
but that's not that I think coming out of it, it's not living wage, and it's just about I don't think it's even proper low income wage.
Yeah, because you can't run that.
It's just shy of that after we've done the reaccounting. I paid myself a bit, which as a farmer, you rarely do you pay yourself. So we've actually managed to give myself a small wage, but it's not, it's less than £10 an hour.
You'd earn a lot more by crossing the road and going milking.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but the hidden benefits is I hope the woodland improvement.
Yeah, so you're managing. If you're standing there with a brush cutter, you're not getting paid at all.
No.
So that labour cost again is a very difficult one to quantify because. So the deal we had was that I would work for pig.
Yeah.
But the reality of that was that we would get our pig box at cost, was how we sort of worked that out, which was pay effectively a 12th of the feed costs, a 12th of the butchery costs.
Yeah.
So 12 pigs, we were getting a whole pig, so we paid for a 12th of the feed, a 12th of the butchery.
Yeah.
And our thing was, I think we came up to assist. Well, I came up to assist with a couple of days setting up
the gate building, the setup, so I think I spent 2 days setting up the paddocks. You gave me half day probably of strimming.
I think it was a day.
Something there was.
We stopped checking.
There was a portion of a day / day that you came and did strimming,
pig moving
day. Or hours, couple of pig feeding days when I was in hospital.
Probably a week of pig feeding spread out throughout
the odd pig feed here covering weekend, days off, things like that, and then the final pig collections.
And then getting the pigs out of the paddock, taking the
going with your
Collecting
wife.
the meat.
Yeah, you can say her name. You can say Laura's name.
Yeah.
Hello, Laura. Going to collect that first batch of pigs, which was 300 kilos of meat. I
Yeah.
was using my truck to do it, so but it still filled the back of a medium-sized SUV.
Yeah. Like if you were picking this up in your normal car, shall we say,
Say a Volkswagen.
you would
Passat.
be doing more than one trip straight away.
Yeah.
Straight away. Just I went with my estate vehicle, and it was all right, but it was sitting low on the suspension as I came out.
Yeah,
It wasn't that bad. I thought it would be worse, but it was still. Whew,
I
felt it.
Isuzu Trooper with uprated springs, 4 heavy loads, and I still noticed the weight driving back.
Yeah, it's a lot of pig.
It's a lot of pig. So I had all of that. So, and because we know how much, those feed costs were substantial, the butchery costs even more substantial. If you worked it out on paper, say, okay, so on your hourly rate for the hours, say £10 an hour, probably not even that really.
Yeah.
But the hours I put in, just put me as one person, because Amy came to help on do different bits as well. But just say my hours I put in, plus what I paid, plus I paid that 12th of the costs. Maybe on paper, I actually paid more. I'm coming around to a point with this.
Yeah, no, I see.
If I'd done it that way, and if I'd not done any of that, and I just bought a pig off you as a box, financially, on that £10 an hour thing, I probably actually would have been better off.
Yeah.
But this gave me an opportunity to effectively raise and slaughter our own pig. Because I didn't have to buy the pig.
No.
Didn't have to rent the land. Didn't have to do most of the management. Didn't have to have the stock holding number. Didn't have to take it to the abattoir. Because going through the abattoir process and booking it in and all of that is a massive
Dealing with
faff.
vets.
Dealing with the vets, dealing with the feed deliveries, holding the feed, doing the medicine stuff. Any of these things that you'd have to do as a farm, I didn't have to do any of that. So if you look at it on a financial comparing, like it's already an expensive pig compared to an online meat box from no-name organic farm, or not even organic farm, just, made up somewhere farm, which is really just a butcher, which happens to be selling you a pig. And compare that to what I paid, in inverted commas, bad deal. Raising our own pig and going to meat, which is what we want to do with lots of different animals, really good deal. So it really depends on how you look at it.
Also, you can dine out on those pig terror stories for years.
Well, we've got this podcast out of it. the experience in there, because I haven't got much experience with pigs. I've got reasonable amount of experience with cows, some experience with sheep, mostly via you, which is a weird experience of sheep, it must be said.
No.
But the experience of pigs is entirely through helping you. If money is your main factor for why you're doing this isn't why you'd do it. You'd go and you'd hang around at Aldi or Tesco or somewhere waiting for pig something to be on offer, which has probably come from the other side of Europe.
Yes, we've looked at pricing when we were basing our some of the sausage prices, bacon prices, and we've got some bigger bits cut up ready for secondary sale through our commercial freezer now. We've looked at the pricing structure for Ocado, Tesco, so on, and our cost prices per kilo are significantly less than any UK-based supermarket-esque prices. Where they run different is when you look at the Tesco basic range or whatever, where it's coming from Denmark.
Yeah.
And that's when you look at it and you go, well, I'm paying this for a pig. I'm paying a couple of £100, and the Tesco price is half that. Why is it that expensive? Well, it's not that. It's that those pigs have been raised overseas far cheaper in far greater numbers and put through a gigantic abattoir probably that can do it at far reduced cost to the owner, the original farm, that allow them to sell it at commercial price. So I think off the top of my head, I think our pigs were somewhere in the range of £6 something per kilo.
Yeah.
There was a message from the pig group on WhatsApp today that one person would be selling their animals commercial dead weight at £7 a kilo. So that's automatically, I think, 50p more than us going direct.
Yeah.
So that person doing their direct sales, who I don't believe they're organic, but they are doing very similar things to us. And I've seen their pricing strategy. They are at least £100 more than what we are.
But then you have...
But their quality, having bought a box scheme that involves some of their meat, the quality of the packaging and the expectation that's coming back to us is greater than what we produce.
And there's also a layer of marketing on that as well, because
marketing.
Your marketing has been able to be verbal.
Yes.
Or you can send a message to a family member or friend and say, we're doing the pigs again this year, do you want to buy the pigs? Which is great, small scale, low, tight community agriculture. But
it's not where we want to be.
If you need to get out to the point of basically you're doing 50 pigs a year, or whatever the number is you need to get to, you need to hit a network of people, you need to market. And marketing
costs.
If you can do it internally, if you can do the photos yourself, you can build your own website and do your own social media and show that value to the customer, then you can do it. You don't see the cost if you can do it yourself. If you don't know how to do it yourself, it's bloody expensive. And when you look at sort of what other people do, you wonder whether the people who just managed to make it work, are they the ones that can do their own marketing? Because they can eat that cost themselves because it's already in their head.
That is hidden cost. Again, it's like the wage cost. It's only viable because they were already on farm doing. It's they were there checking the pigs and checking the sheep and doing the cows, and the pigs just happened to be next door. So instead of it taking an hour to do that operation, it was I've just looked over the fence.
Yeah, or the classic thing of, these are my costs because this is everything I have an invoice for.
Yes.
But you don't have an invoice for your own knowledge and your 20 years of skill, or that person over there, or it doesn't work on a really cold balance sheet accounting of the thing, which I think is what I'm trying to come back around to with this, which I think is a really important thing for the customer and for people listening to this podcast, that it's not about the price. Price has to come into it because eventually it has to come out of your bank account, but it's why are you doing it? What is your reason for doing it? Why are you buying that thing from that person? And even the farmer, even the producer, probably doesn't have a good idea of what it is. It's just, if you're doing it entirely on money, you wouldn't be doing this as a small scale producer.
Yeah, if you could see the whole cost laid bare.
Yeah.
In stellar lights.
But you don't do your kind of sort of semi-regenerative agriculture, sort of somewhere between permaculture and regen is where you are, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't do that kind of agriculture for the big money.
No.
You could be growing rapeseed oil and getting someone else in to cut it. And
if we wanted to make profit, we'd probably rent all our ground out to the local dairy farmer who would turn it all into maize.
And camping pods and whatever.
There would be camping pods. The woods would be managed to an inch of their life by another company, and we'd be sat there passively incoming.
Yeah, but the fact we can run through the other side of the business, through the Original Outdoors side, we can come and bring people to your farm and run nature courses and wildlife identification courses and foraging courses, and we can go and shoot at your farm without doing released driven pheasants and those kind of things. We know that you and I wander around with a shotgun at the right time, we can walk away with wild game to eat.
If you come to our farm and you look at what we are selling or trying to create. It is as morally, ethically, as sympathetically chosen to be done in that management style as we can, to sort of make a home, really, but also not just give us a home, but as part of my ethos is to try and create something that will in the future feed the local area, but also provide the habitat and sort of landscape spaces where as many different things can come and live and survive and thrive, where the urban fringes and other landscape uses and other farming methods don't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only person doing that. There are many farms trying to do very similar things, but there's not many of us.
Yeah.
And if we can monetize that somehow, we need to somehow charge the customer a bit more if they want that, because if we didn't do that, if we were just the commercial farm using all the herbicides and pesticides and whatever, and just being as sort of middle of the road, as pushed, following all the government guidelines just to the T, life would be boring. Your meat would probably not be as nutritiously
dense,
thank you, and or tasty, and it wouldn't be fun.
No,
or happy.
And you said about charging more to the customer. Maybe it's about showing that value to the customer, because I think the customer already has that value, but just don't understand the route to it.
Yes.
I was talking with somebody about this the other day, about sort of perception of values, and there is this thing that as you get older, you change who you hang around with and friends. You know, the people you voluntarily spend time with becomes a reflection of your personal values.
Yes.
You know, you don't hang around with people who think completely opposite to you all the time. You end up sort of an echo chamber, but it is all the contrary views. But that person doesn't think in the same way as I do about this one subject, but they value the same things I do.
Yeah,
they are sympathetic to your values, and I think as we evolve this sort of loose thing that we have with this podcast and what a food resilience network is, it's not just about I can always get meat from that person, it's a reliable person. It's not. I want to get meat from somebody who values the same things I do. And they value the same things that I do with regards to the landscape and the ecology and the ethics of how that meat is produced. And that is something that I can see and I can hold true for myself in the product that I'm buying from them. And I'd rather support you at a higher cost than get a more reliable meat supply for the same amount of money by buying in bulk from somewhere else. I don't want to Costco buying meat.
Yeah.
I want to, but I'm not also, it's the most exclusive place to buy meat from. It's like, no, it's that bloke over there, and I know what his pigs eat because I stand in the middle of them.
Yeah, it's, I suppose, an interesting way of putting it is effectively you are doing a bit of Patreon style. I like what you're producing because I get enjoyment from it somehow. And it is value adding to my lifestyle and the way I live. Therefore, I'm going to support you, monetarily. Whereas I could just listen to the radio or whatever, the free stuff, but I wouldn't be able to choose the inputs or what's coming at me. I just get what other people are pushing.
Yeah. And you have more options now. And I think if I could get the audience to take anything away from this episode,
as something that they can then go off and practically do themselves.
Hmm.
It's sort of find the equivalent of you for their network, where it's somebody who is producing meat in a way that is not financially driven.
Or veg. Don't
Or
forget
veg.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, that's the same with everything, but it's, in this particular case, it's meat that is farmed. You are farming meat. You are a farmer. Yeah. But they are not doing it on the sliced down to the inch profit. You can't. There aren't many farms you can say are doing it for the money, really, but there are scales within farming. One end is the factory scale, very modernized, very tight rotations through of that livestock on that cycle, and tightly managed, all the inputs tightly managed because it has to be. Whereas we are doing it in this way, it's going to cost what it costs.
Yes.
If that feed price had gone up by 10%, my cost would have gone up by 10%.
Yeah.
If you only had a vague idea what the butchery cost would be.
Yeah.
And you couldn't really tell your customers what they were paying for their pig properly until you had that. So you couldn't do a deposit scheme and then pay 20% every month for 4 months after that to pay off your whole pig in one go.
No.
Because at the end of it, you would be pricing things on what you expected it to be in June. And by the time we got through to October, the prices have all gone up and you've lost money on every single pig.
Yes.
But you've promised to people this is what it's going to be. So there are all sorts of ways of achieving this. You can find producers individually. You can do community-supported agriculture, where you're buying shares. And there are subscriptions, aren't there, for people doing things in a certain way, and you get your pig box or your beef box or your lamb box. But it's, every 3 months you get
a part of a part, you over the whole year you might buy a whole animal, but it turns up at your door like an Amazon delivery a couple of times a month. And
I think we talked about the lack of small abattoirs and lack of small meat processing facilities and the lack of infrastructure for that, and sometimes it's a bit of a postcode lottery as to what you can get. But because of social media, because of the ability to reach a wider audience, I know that we've got people in New Zealand and South Africa and Brazil listening to this podcast that I'm never going to meet, never going to speak to, but because of the way we can use this network and use the internet, we can reach them. And small-scale producers can do that now, but you've also got to be very canny with your advertising, very canny with your marketing, and you've got to evolve to meet that changing market. But I think we are in a place now where you will be able to source these things, but you've got to put in the time, you've got to put in the miles to go and find somebody that does what you want to do. And I would say it's better to do it locally where possible, because it puts you in touch with a network of other people. Because meeting your farmer, know your food producer, know your local farm shop that genuinely does supply things from the local area, you will end up meeting the person who drops off the eggs 3 times a week, who might know something else or might take you on something else, or where do you get your veg from, or you do this. So it's like, I didn't know you had bees as well. Oh, we're doing a honey next year. Oh, can I buy direct from you? We have connections like that. But it takes work. It takes a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, and it's good. The few repeat customers that we've had over the years they will buy our product no matter what. They bought into the story years ago, and it's not just who we are as people, but they can challenge us to stay to what we said we would do. You can hold, when you start going to your local farmer or your local food producer and you get that connection to them, that community with them, you then also challenge them to uphold those ideals that you first went to them for. Because if you stop going to them, that's when they lose that community. That's when they're forced to go to the next best thing, which suddenly means that they're more likely to become more commercial. And so you will get the farming system that you want, the food system that you want, by patroning it or by not.
Yeah.
And if we want a better world, we need more people, hopefully, buying into our system than the heavy commercial agriculture or the heavy commercial food system. You know, the vertical farming, the bioengineered foodstuffs, your Beyond Burger type foods,
Yep.
which are very much more favourable to big government, big
supply chain.
Than what we do. And I think, you know, everyone needs a farmer 3 times a day is so apt. And if you can find your own farmer, well, you know, like my wife did, marry one.
Yeah, that was probably the best move you can do, isn't it? For that first continuing food supply is marry into it.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's befriending people as well, and being aware that their more expensive veg, their more expensive honey, their more expensive meat is not rampant profiteering because it's cheaper in Tesco.
Yeah.
It's overall they are making less.
Yeah.
And when you look into the supply chain that goes to supermarkets and the prices that are there for supermarkets and how supermarkets particularly beat suppliers down on pricing so that they have to sell at a loss almost to stay in that market so that they might make a profit one day in the future.
Yeah.
No one, if your values are more towards the ecological side of things, the animal welfare side of things, the traceability, the ethics of raising livestock in a way that you would be happy for yourself, then you can't look to any of the big supply chains for that. They're not going to fulfill that for you. And as you say, I can't trust that whatever supermarket ethically raised pork is actually that. It could be ethically raised pork means we have met the minimum standards on this day of inspection.
Yeah. You know, or this meat comes from the UK.
Yeah.
It was brought in by a boat from somewhere in Europe, and it was packed in this country, which suddenly allows.
But there's a Union Jack on the label.
It's got a Union Jack, and it's Red Tractor approved.
Yeah.
Because of it, suddenly magically becomes British.
Yeah.
When it lands at our border.
Yeah. We're heading to a point where, which is, from a financial point, it's from a point of privilege, because it means that we have to be able to afford to do it or have the opportunity to do it. But we want to get to the point where all the meat we consume, we either had a hand in its death, so hunting, fishing, some type, or we had a hand in its life. We know how it was raised. So either we're paying somebody to raise it in the right way, or we actually raise it ourselves.
The cost addition that you're paying is that you are paying that farmer to produce it in a better way.
Yeah.
So
I'm paying it in a way that I'm happier with.
Yeah.
As well. Because that's the thing, when I'm eating your meat, when I'm consuming the pork products that we have from your farm.
That we created.
It hits me in the same way that eating game that we've shot, eating a deer that I've butchered, eating fish that we've caught.
Yeah.
It kind of fits in that way in my brain. There's I don't want to say spiritual connection, but there's a connection to a place and a landscape while I'm eating that.
Yeah.
That is not there with anonymous cut of meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's that French word terroir.
Yes. Exactly.
That is this food is from this place, it's from this weather, it's from this soil, it's from this one location, that you can feel it all in that food. I think that is there's an ethical terroir.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
So that's probably where I should end it.
Yeah. Go out and find your local farmer. Support them. They need you. They are very much under attack by the greater corporations at the moment. And yeah, go and find your food, find your tribe, and help them.
Ask them what it's like raising that meat.
Yeah.
Ask them to hear a little bit of that story, rather than just assume it's rampant profiteering. That's why it's more expensive.
Yeah. And every farmer will give you the time of day to do that if you're interested in what they're creating. Because most farmers don't get in it to profit. They do it for the love of the job.
They often inherit it. It's like you have to keep doing it, otherwise you're homeless.
Exactly. Anyway.
But it is
Let's not go there.
Well, no, it's kind of like family agriculture. That's often the way. You're doing it to keep the farm because that's where you were born, and that's where your father was born, and that's where your grandfather was born.
But 90% of the food in the world is provided by small farms, by, small, couples creating food that is sold locally, and rare, the rare ones make it a bit bigger and sell nationally.
Yeah. And if you're wanting to ask a farmer or the farm shop these questions, and they don't really want to answer them, that probably gives you your answer about whether you want it. If they want to talk, if they say, talk to us about how you raise your meat, how the animals are raised, and they light up and they talk to you about it, and they go, oh yeah, we do this, we try doing this, and we now do this, you're on to a winner. If they go, just buy it or go away, well, maybe go away.
Yes.
Right, let's wrap it up. Thank you, Alistair. Where can people
find me?
Well, there'll be links in this podcast, so you can go there.
Yeah. And at some point in the near future, we'll finally get a website presence. But I do have Instagram as Eyath Rocks, EYARTH ROCKS. And I don't really use the other platforms at the moment, so
no,
we'll leave it there.
Does now. No. All right. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.